Peter Parker. A friendly neighborhood superhero can accidentally wear a living space nightmare without reading the label. Back during the legendary 1984 crossover event called Secret Wars, an omnipotent cosmic entity known as the Beyonder moved major heroes to a crazy patchwork planet named Battleworld. Our poor web-slinger faced a brutal skirmish that left his classic red and blue outfit completely destroyed. Thor and the Hulk pointed him towards an alien machine to fabricate fresh clothing. Instead of a sewing machine, Peter messed with a containment device holding a captive alien parasite. A strange black sphere popped out and instantly engulfed his entire body. It reacted to his thoughts, turning into a cool black and white costume. The new look came with incredible perks like super strength, unlimited organic webbing, and a sleek ability to transform into civilian clothes. Why? It wanted to be convenient. After that, Peter brought this miraculous suit back to Earth without knowing it was a sentient organism. Soon he faced unexplained exhaustion and bad nightmares. What happened? The sneaky suit took control of his unconscious body during sleep for nocturnal patrols to satisfy its wild adrenaline addiction. Peter quickly visited Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four for help. Reed analyzed the material and discovered its living nature. Concentrated sonic blasts inside the Baxter building then were used to separate the creature from Peter. Naturally, the alien escaped containment and attached to him again. In a desperate bid for freedom, Peter crawled up the bell tower of Our Lady of Saints Church. The deafening sound of tolling church bells weakened the parasite, forcing it to detach. This left a lingering, vengeful resentment inside the creature. Talk about bad clothing choices. Eddie Brock. Finding a perfect partner usually involves dating apps, but sometimes it just takes a mutual hatred for a guy in spandex. Edward Charles Brock was a successful reporter working for the Daily Globe in New York City. His career collapsed when he published an article identifying Emil Gregg as the serial killer known as the Sin Eater. Shortly after, Peter Parker captured the true murderer, Stanley Carter. This completely destroyed Eddie's reputation and personal life. Disgraced, fired, and divorced by his wife, Anne Weying, Eddie sank into a deep depression. He blamed Spider-Man for his spectacular downfall while intensely bodybuilding to manage his stress. Contemplating suicide, Eddie sought solace in Our Lady of Saints Church. What's crazy is that Peter Parker had just forcefully rejected the alien parasite there. And sensing Eddie's monumental hatred, the weakened creature dropped from the shadows and bonded with him, creating Venom. As Venom, Eddie possessed all of Spider-Man's abilities, bypassed his spider sense, and knew Peter's secret identity. Eddie tormented Peter for years before his twisted moral code shifted his trajectory. Believing himself to be a protector, Eddie relocated to San Francisco, operating as a brutal anti-hero in the Lethal Protector era. His journey was turbulent, involving multiple force separations, battling terminal cancer, and bonding with alternative symbiotes like Anti-Venom and Toxin. Ultimately, Eddie Brock evolved beyond this vendetta, fully reuniting with the Venom symbiote to face cosmic threats. He eventually defeated Null, the god of the symbiotes, and ascended to become the new King in Black. That is definitely one way to handle losing your journalism job, since unemployment usually involves way less space, gooey alien drama. Mac Gargan. Some bad guys will trade a clunky insect shell for an aggressive alien just to get noticed. MacDonald Gargan originally operated as a private investigator funded by J. Jonah Jameson. Jameson paid for an experimental agonizing procedure that permanently bonded Gargan to a mechanical suit, transforming him into Scorpion. For decades, Gargan was a persistent, albeit inadequate, adversary of Spider-Man. His monumental transition occurred during the 2004 Marvel Knights Spider-Man run. Following Eddie Brock's decision to auction off the Venom symbiote and abandon his lifestyle due to terminal cancer, the alien briefly bonded with a mobster's cowardly son before abandoning him in mid-air. Seeking a ruthless host, the symbiote approached Gargan, offering him power far beyond his Scorpion capabilities. Gargan eagerly accepted, completely discarding his old identity to become a monstrous hulking iteration to Venom. Unlike Eddie Brock, who constantly maintained a fragile dominance over the alien, Gargan surrendered to the symbiote's barbaric predatory impulses. This resulted in a savage Venom who frequently indulged in gruesome cannibalism, literally eating his defeated adversaries. Gargan became an enforcer for the criminal underworld, serving in Norman Osborn's Sinister 12 and the Thunderbolts. During the Dark Reign storyline, Osborn recruited Gargan into the Dark Avengers, administering specialized chemical suppressants that forced the massive symbiote to shrink and perfectly mimic Spider-Man's classic black costume. Posing as a heroic Spider-Man, Gargan continued his grotesque, flesh-eating habits in secret. His horrific tenure as Venom concluded when the symbiote was forcefully ripped from his body by superhero forces during the climactic siege of Asgard. Honestly, staying a plain old scorpion sounds a whole lot safer, unless you enjoy eating your enemies for dinner without any proper table manners. Flash Thompson. High school bullies can surprisingly grow up to become decorated war heroes working with scary alien monsters. Eugene Flash Thompson began his story as Peter Parker's relentlessly cruel high school bully, functioning simultaneously as Spider-Man's absolute greatest fan and vocal supporter. Flash matured, burying his bullying past by enlisting in the U.S. military, inspired by Spider-Man's heroism. During a harrowing combat tour in the Iraq War, Flash exhibited immense bravery by charging into an active ambush to save his commanding officer, tragically suffering severe injuries that caused the complete amputation of his legs below the knee. His sacrifice earned him the Medal of Honor and caught the attention of the Department of Veteran Affairs. In the 2011 Amazing Spider-Man run, the government initiated Project Rebirth 2.0, utilizing the recently confiscated Venom symbiote. Flash was selected due to his military record and psychological resilience, bonding with the alien to become the highly covert operative known as Agent Venom. The symbiote completely restored Flash's mobility, creating biological legs while gaining him immense superhuman strength. To prevent the predatory alien from permanently hijacking his mind, Flash was subjected to a rigid 48-hour bonding limit, heavily supported by chemical suppressants. As Agent Venom, Flash combined military tactics, heavy firearms, and symbiote shapeshifting to battle villains like the Jack-O-Lantern. He even joined the Secret Avengers and the Guardians of the Galaxy. Flash developed a unique collaborative relationship with the symbiote, teaching the aggressive alien the true meaning of heroism. After becoming the Space Knight and bonding with the anti-Venom symbiote, Flash tragically sacrificed his own life fighting the Red Goblin, dying a true hero. Talk about upgrading your hallway bully routine. Cletus Cassidy. Locking two completely unhinged criminals in the same tiny prison cell is an excellent recipe for a giant crimson nightmare. Cletus Cassidy represents the absolute darkest potential of a symbiote host, completely lacking any redeeming human qualities. A deeply sadistic serial killer from birth, Cassidy's childhood was a horrifying catalog of extreme violence, including the murder of his own grandmother and the deliberate burning of the St. Estes home for boys. Driven by a chaotic, purely nihilistic philosophy that life is inherently meaningless and violence is the ultimate freedom, Cassidy was eventually incarcerated in a maximum security cell block at Rikers Island. During the 1991 Amazing Spider-Man storyline, Eddie Brock was placed in the exact same cell while temporarily separated from the Venom symbiote. When the Venom alien breached the prison walls to violently rescue Eddie, it unknowingly left behind tiny, asexual reproducing offspring. This newborn symbiote slithered into a small cut on Cassidy's hand, permanently bonding directly to his cellular structure and bloodstream. This horrific biological fusion created the immensely powerful blood-red entity known as Carnage. Because the bond was literally in his blood, Cassidy and the alien became a singular, inseparable consciousness, constantly referring to themselves as I instead of we. Carnage immediately embarked on a staggering reign of terror, culminating in the infamous Maximum Carnage event, where Cassidy led a makeshift family of psychopathic supervillains on a citywide slaughter across New York. Cassidy utilized the symbiote to form incredibly lethal detachable bladed weapons from his own mass. His horrific legacy spanned decades of constant bloodshed, eventually culminating in Absolute Carnage event, where he systematically hunted down former symbiote hosts to harvest their genetic codices and awaken Null. Next time, give the man a solo cell. Norman Osborn. Spicing up a classic villain outfit with a blood-red space parasite is one way to handle an identity crisis. Norman Osborn is the wealthy, brilliantly psychopathic industrialist who originated the terrifying mantle of the Green Goblin. As Spider-Man's absolute greatest arch-nemesis, Norman was personally responsible for the devastating murder of Gwen Stacy and decades of profound psychological torture inflicted upon Peter Parker. Following a brutal defeat that completely stripped him of his goblin powers via microscopic nanites, a desperate Norman sought a drastically new method to completely destroy his hated foe. During the 2018 Go Down Swinging storyline, Norman executed a flawless heist to steal the highly dangerous Carnage symbiote from a heavily fortified secure lockup. Initially, the dominant, bloodthirsty alien heavily struggled against Norman's sheer megalomaniac willpower. However, Norman cleverly struck a twisted, mutually beneficial bargain with the parasite, violently injecting his own patented Goblin serum directly into the alien's biological mass. This horrifying synthesis created a completely unprecedented, near unstoppable monstrosity dubbed the Red Goblin. The combination of the Goblin serum and the symbiote biology completely negated the traditional alien weaknesses to intense fire and high-frequency sound, making him virtually invincible. The Red Goblin embarked on a highly systemic, incredibly devastating campaign, specifically targeting every single person Peter loved, including Flash Thompson that we talked about earlier. Norman gleefully armed himself with unique Carnage bombs and a terrifying flaming glider, even going so far as to permanently infect his own young grandson, Normie Osborn, creating the miniature Goblin child. Ultimately, Spider-Man defeated this monstrous amalgamation by brilliantly manipulating Norman's colossal fragile ego, successfully convincing him that the symbiote would unjustly claim all the historic credit, prompting Norman to foolishly detach the suit. Pride really goes before a massive cosmic touchdown. Patrick Mulligan. Expected fathers usually worry about diapers, but finding yourself pregnant with a giant monster baby is a completely different challenge. Patrick Mulligan represented a fantastic example of everyday heroism in the Marvel Universe. He was a highly decorated, profoundly honorable New York City police officer, a deeply loving husband, and an eagerly expectant father before his entire reality was completely shattered. His tragic transformation occurred during the 2004 Venom Carnage miniseries. The wildly unpredictable Carnage symbiote was preparing to spawn an offspring, but fully intended to murder the newborn alien immediately, deeply fearing it would eventually become a superior rival. Venom, desperately hoping to raise the offspring as a powerful ally, actively intervened in the birth. During the resulting chaotic battle, Carnage spitefully implanted the newborn alien parasite directly into the closest human bystander, Patrick Mulligan, secretly planning to track and destroy it later. Venom officially named this newly created entity Toxin. Patrick suddenly found himself violently thrust into a terrifying, completely unbelievable new reality, forced to share his mind and body with an infallible, highly naive, but massively powerful alien intelligence. Toxin was remarkably unique, possessing physical strength that significantly dwarfed both Venom and Carnage combined. Patrick struggled immensely with his terrifying new existence, constantly fighting a grueling internal battle to fundamentally teach the completely amoral alien basic human decency, while actively restraining its incredibly violent, highly predatory urges. He bravely attempted to use his newfound overwhelming abilities to violently fight crime and protect the innocent. However, the immense psychological strain of hiding his monstrous alter ego eventually forced Patrick to tragically abandon his beloved wife and newborn child to guarantee their absolute safety. Despite his valiant efforts, Patrick was literally brutally murdered off-panel by the demonic villain Blackheart, and the Toxin symbiote was forcefully removed. Talk about a stressful family tree dynamic. Wade Wilson. A red-suited mark with a mouth can easily mess up the entire history of alien fashion without even trying. Originally, comic readers believed Peter Parker was the absolute first human to discover the alien costume on Battleworld during the monumental 1984 Secret Wars event. However, the 2015 miniseries Deadpool's Secret Wars drastically retconned this established history, revealing that Wade actually discovered the alien containment machine mere moments before Spider-Man arrived. Seeking a replacement for his torn costume, Deadpool inadvertently released the black ooze, which immediately engulfed his body. Unlike Peter, whose mind was relatively stable, Wade's consciousness was completely fractured, immensely chaotic, and deeply disturbed. The telepathic alien instantly connected with Deadpool's incredibly broken psyche, experimenting profound psychological trauma from the mercenary's sheer insanity. Realizing the suit was a sentient organism feeding on his chaotic thoughts, a remarkably considerate Deadpool forcefully removed the symbiote and returned it to its containment sphere. What makes it even crazier is that this brief catastrophic mental exposure is the exact reason that the Venom symbiote eventually exhibited such immense violent instability. Years later, in the Deadpool Back in Black miniseries, the timeline was further explored, showing that after Spider-Man initially rejected the symbiote, using church bells, the weakened alien desperately sought out Deadpool for absolute protection. Wade briefly bonded with the parasite yet again, operating as a symbiotic mercenary to violently defend the hunted creature from aggressive extraterrestrial poachers before finally directing it safely towards a depressed Eddie Brock. Talk about a completely unhinged cosmic babysitting job, since leaving your alien pet with Deadpool is an excellent way to break the multiverse. Carol Danvers. Getting a major costume upgrade usually involves a trip to a boutique, not a giant cannibalistic space monster trying to eat you alive. This chaotic event unfolded directly during the massive 2010 Siege storyline, where Norman Osborn arrogantly directed his villainous Dark Avengers to violently invade the mythical realm of Asgard, which was currently floating above Broxton, Oklahoma. During the explosive siege, Carol engaged in brutal physical combat with Mac Gargan, who was fully bonded with the Venom symbiote and masquerading as a monstrous Spider-Man. Gargan savagely ambushed Carol, physically pinning her down and arrogantly preparing to literally consume her alive. Refusing to be completely defeated by a cannibalistic monster, Carol powerfully reached directly into the symbiotic mass and forcefully ripped Gargan physically out of the suit. Shockingly, the violently displaced symbiote immediately latched onto Carol instead, perfectly exploiting her immense cosmic energy reserves to morph into a terrifying, heavily muscled, venomized iteration of Miss Marvel. The alien vigorously attempted to permanently usurp her consciousness, hungrily desiring her staggering physical capabilities. On top of that, Carol possesses an incredibly indomitable military willpower that absolutely refused to completely yield. Maintaining a fractional sliver of consciousness control, she deliberately propelled herself directly upwards at supersonic speeds, rapidly exiting the Earth's atmosphere. The sudden combination of extreme atmospheric friction and the freezing vacuum of outer space severely weakened the alien organism, forcing it to violently detach from her body and successfully liberating the cosmic heroine entirely. Space travel really is the ultimate remedy for sticky alien infestations. Bruce Banner. Mixing an angry green giant with a sentient black space parasite is a wonderful recipe for absolute global domination. The horrific amalgamation officially occurred during the highly destructive 2019 Absolute Carnage event. The resurrected Cletus Cassidy, massively empowered by the Grendel symbiote and transformed into Dark Carnage, proved to be fundamentally unstoppable for traditional street-level heroes. Realizing they desperately required a staggering physical powerhouse to legitimately combat Cassidy, Eddie Brock made the incredibly difficult tactical decision to completely surrender the Venom symbiote. He formally offered his trusted alien partner directly to Bruce Banner, who was currently struggling with his own dark internal personas. Banner actively accepted, and the symbiote completely enveloped him. Immediately following the bonding process, Banner forcefully transformed into the Hulk, completely stretching and mutating the black alien biomass to perfectly accommodate his massive gamma-irradiated physique. This completely unprecedented synthesis produced the spectacularly violent Venom Hulk, a towering behemoth featuring a massive white spider insignias, colossal fangs, and completely unbounded rage. The Venom Hulk ferociously engaged Dark Carnage in a spectacularly brutal physical confrontation, violently smashing through city blocks and trading devastating blows. What's worse, despite possessing the combined might of the strongest Avenger and the lethal Protector, the god-tier power of Dark Carnage ultimately proved superior. Cassidy mercilessly overpowered the giant, violently ripping the symbiote entirely off Banner's body and gruesomely absorbing it, temporarily leaving the severely battered scientist unconscious, while the terrifying Carnage rapidly evolved into a truly unstoppable demonic force of destruction. Angrier isn't always better, especially when the other guy brought a god-tier space cheat code to the fist fight. Gwen Stacy. Alternate universes can feature completely unique designer outfits created in a lab rather than the standard hitchhiking space rocks. In her native universe, the symbiote is completely devoid of extraterrestrial origins. Instead, it was artificially engineered in a clandestine laboratory by scientist Eliza Brock, who actively synthesized the dangerous mutagenic isotopes originally created by her universe's Peter Parker, which previously transformed him into the monstrous lizard. During the emotionally devastating 2017 Spider-Gwen storyline, Gwen recently lost her original radioactive spider powers and was relying entirely on temporary chemical power-ups. When the villainous Rhino brutally assaulted her beloved father, Captain George Stacy, severely injuring him, a deeply enraged Gwen desperately sought absolute power for violent retribution. She deliberately bonded with Eliza's highly experimental symbiote, instantly becoming the terrifying entity affectionately dubbed Venom. This specific artificial symbiote aggressively amplified her darkest negative emotions, fueling a highly vicious rampage against the criminal underworld, specifically targeting Matt Murdock, who operated as the sinister kingpin in her reality. What's crazier is that unlike Eddie, who historically struggled for psychological dominance, Gwen actively confronted the suit's inherent aggression by profoundly accepting her internal flaws, eventually establishing a genuinely peaceful equilibrium with the artificial organism. The symbiote permanently replaced her lost biological abilities, perfectly mimicking her classic white and pink ghost spider costume, while significantly expanding her versatile crime-fighting capabilities across multiple changing dimensional travel adventures, firmly cementing her incredible unique status as a highly heroic, perfectly stable permanent symbiote host in Marvel Comics. Otto Octavius. Stealing the worst enemy's body is already peak arrogance, but thinking you can easily control his alien crazy luggage is a whole new level of hubris. Otto's remarkably disastrous experience as a host during the 2014 Superior Spider-Man storyline. When Flash Thompson arrived in New York City operating as the heroic Agent Venom, an incredibly arrogant Otto deemed the unpredictable alien parasite an unacceptable civic hazard. Using specialized sonic weaponry and advanced technological surgical equipment, Otto forcefully separated the symbiote from a heavily sedated Flash. However, believing his own unmatched genius intellect was strong enough to perfectly control any extraterrestrial organism, Otto deliberately bonded the alien to himself, immediately becoming the monstrously aggressive Superior Venom. This was a catastrophic miscalculation. The Venom symbiote viciously amplified Otto's inherent superiority complex, his deeply suppressed rage, and his fundamental lack of basic human empathy. The Superior Venom rapidly mutated into a massive, heavily armored beast, with terrifying biological tentacles, embarking on a highly brutal, intensely violent rampage against common street criminals. Even worse, Otto actively ignored completely innocent bystanders, violently clashing with the Avengers who desperately arrived to contain him. Despite his towering arrogance, Otto completely lost psychological control to the beast. He was only saved when the deeply buried, lingering remnant consciousness of Peter Parker powerfully surged forward from within his mind, actively helping Otto forcefully reject the suit so it could safely reunite with the highly deserving, perfectly capable hero Flash Thompson completely. That's why brains clearly cannot beat highly unhinged space wardrobe malfunction. Norin Radd. Flying around the galaxy on a shiny silver surfboard does not make you immune to aggressive blood-red coat of paint. During the classic 1998 Amazing Spider-Man comic storyline, the Surfer peacefully arrived on Earth, completely unaware that his arrival was directly observed by the psychopathic Cletus Cassidy. The deeply malevolent Carnage symbiote, sensing the utterly staggering, practically limitless reservoir of the power cosmic radiating from Norin Radd, immediately abandoned its longtime serial killer host. It viciously ambushed the Surfer, forcefully engulfing his silver form to completely forge a horrifying, powerful amalgamation appropriately titled Carnage Cosmic. This terrifying entity perfectly combined the completely unhinged bloodlust and shape-shifting lethality of the Carnage alien with the literal god-tier cosmic energy manipulation of a former Herald of Galactus. Spider-Man watched in absolute horror as this practically invincible monster instantly wreaked chaotic destruction. The symbiote desperately attempted to completely consume Norin's incredibly pure soul, continuously feeding on his immense cosmic radiation. But that's not even the worst part, because the Silver Surfer possesses an incredibly pure, fundamentally unbreakable willpower forged across centuries of intergalactic hardship. Deliberately flying directly into the freezing vacuum of deep space to dramatically minimize earthly casualties, Norin engaged in a massive internal psychological war against the parasite. Utilizing his absolute mastery over cosmic energy, he successfully overwhelmed the alien, actively forcing it to detach. To prevent further tragedy, he remarkably returned the symbiote to Cassidy, but mercifully trapped the villain inside an entirely unbreakable, fundamentally impenetrable energy containment shell securely. Sometimes space wax really helps repel those nasty red stains. Thor Odinson. A literal thunder god wielding a magical hammer's cool, but throwing an ancient primordial shadow blade into the mix is just showing off. The absolute most significant bonding occurred during Jason Aaron's critically acclaimed Thor, God of Thunder comic series, specifically expanding upon the ancient origins of the Clintar race. Deep in the distant apocalyptic future, an ancient heavily battered King Thor stood as the final defender of a dying Asgard against the world-devouring entity Galactus. To successfully combat this seemingly invincible cosmic threat, King Thor made a phenomenally desperate choice, willingly bonding with All Black, the Necro Sword. In modern Marvel continuity, Donny Cates heavily retconned All Black to be the absolute first symbiote ever created, directly forged from living darkness by Null, the terrifying god of the symbiotes. This primordial parasite completely engulfed the All-Father, instantly transforming him into a massive, horrifyingly dark iteration of the Thunder God, All Black, the All-Father. This unprecedented cosmic synthesis aggressively amplified Thor's divine magical abilities with the infinite god-slaying dark magic of the original symbiote, granting him the necessary staggering power to physically launch devastating offensive assaults against Galactus. Not to mention, using a morphing razor-sharp black tendrils and corrupting shadows of the Necro Sword, King Thor miraculously achieved the impossible, successfully striking down the Devourer of Worlds. However, truly recognizing the deeply corruptive, highly malicious sentience of the primordial blade, a highly resilient Thor deliberately relinquished the dark weapon shortly after achieving absolute cosmic victory, bravely maintaining his inherent divine purity against the dark alien influence. Sometimes fighting space hunger requires some very sketchy, questionable ancient kitchen utensils. Well, that's it for this one. If you liked the video, hit that like button, subscribe for more, and ring the bell so you never miss a drop. Craving more stories from comics, movies, and beyond? Check out this video right here. Cheers, and see you in the next one.